In modern times, the Czech brand Skoda is well known for its passenger cars and crossovers, although it has been producing trucks and large buses since the 1930s. However, in the brand's history, there was one curious model unique in its kind, as Skoda never produced microvans before or after it. What's even more surprising is that such an unusual vehicle appeared during the height of socialism and, oddly enough, was produced until the end of the 20th century. Today, we will look back at how this happened and why the Skoda 1203 deserves our attention even 50 years later. The beginning. In the mid-20th century, many socialist manufacturers came to the conclusion that the most rational layout for light commercial vehicles was the van-type design, as it allowed for the maximum number of passengers or cargo to be transported within a given body length. Examples include the Barkas from East Germany, the Polish Nyssa and Zuk, as well as the Soviet UAZ and RAF vehicles. By the early 70s, the countries of the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance, Comecon, had plenty of microbus models. In the late 50s and early 60s, Skoda had commercial versions based on the 1201 and 1202 station wagons, such as vans and pickups, but their cargo carrying capabilities were limited. The passenger versions of these vehicles could carry no more than 5 people, including the driver. The socialist state primarily needed such vehicles, as many enterprises found full-sized trucks or buses too large, and using such vehicles to transport a few passengers or less than a ton of cargo was impractical. Purchasing such vehicles abroad was theoretically possible but would have required foreign currency. Therefore, the state formulated its technical requirements, the creation of a lightweight, multifunctional, and spacious commercial vehicle suitable for transporting both passengers and cargo. The previous platform with an archaic backbone frame was no longer suitable for such a vehicle, so it was decided to create the car using the then trendy design of fully metal monocoque body with a van layout. To speed up the process and reduce costs for launching a completely new model, it was decided to maximize the use of components from existing models. Work on the microbus began in 1956, and by September, the first 3 prototypes, designated 979, were ready. These were equipped with a 1.2-liter engine producing 36 horsepower, mounted in front of the front axle. A second series was built in March 1957, which was much more spacious and refined in appearance. A single prototype of the third series was created in July of the same year, with the engine now positioned above the front axle, improving the vehicle's handling. The next prototype appeared in March 1958 and was very close to the final design of the production model. Since testing of the previous prototypes showed that the 36 horsepower engine was too weak for such a large and spacious microbus, it was decided to equip the vehicle with a more powerful 52 horsepower engine, originally developed for the military vehicle Skoda 973. Additionally, the prototype was fitted with a torsion bar rear suspension from the Tatra 805. The final design of the vehicle was completed between 1961 and 1962, meaning Czechoslovakia was not lagging behind the USSR with its Rafik and UAZ, or East Germany with its Barkas. Interestingly, during the same period, work was underway to create light utility vehicles for agricultural use, which also used components from the 1203 model. However, the body design was radically different, as it featured a simplified platform with a canvas top. The doors and windshield frame could be easily removed, and the sides of the body could be folded down for easier loading and unloading. This resulted in a simple field transporter for carrying harvests. The prototype of this utility vehicle was named the Skoda 998 Agromobile, and it was planned to be produced at the Epochs CZ factory, known in our country for its ZZ motorcycles. A little over a dozen prototypes were built, but the project never reached mass production. The long road to production. By 1962, the concept and design of the vehicle were finalized and approved in the form of a microbus, an ambulance, and a cargo platform vehicle, all under the designation Skoda 1203. However, the vehicle did not enter mass production until 1968, meaning this much-needed multi-purpose vehicle missed almost the entire 60s. Why did this happen? To start production of a completely new model, significant reconfiguration of the factory floor was required, as well as retooling the assembly line, purchasing and setting up new body stamping equipment, and recalibrating much of the machinery. All of this required funding. It's also worth noting that Skoda was actively updating its passenger car lineup at the time, and funding priority was naturally given to that rather than to a completely new type of vehicle for the factory. Moreover, within the Comic-Con framework, the needs of state enterprises could be met by purchasing Polish and East German micr ovens. Nevertheless, in late 1968, after all the production challenges and delays, the first serial example of the 1203 microbus finally rolled off the assembly line in the Czech town of Wrocław. Thus, 12 years had passed since the start of work on the new vehicle, a long time even by today's standards. For comparison, only the Moskvich 412 and the Tavria took similarly long to reach production in the Soviet Union, largely due to funding priorities favoring AvtoVAZ over other Soviet car factories. By this time, the Skoda S design had not aged too much, as it avoided any overly trendy features. Despite its charmingly wide-eyed front end with large round headlights, the vehicle looked quite dynamic for a microbus, thanks to the steeply sloping short hood and the rear section, which was not vertical like many vans but had a noticeable positive angle, emphasized by the shape of the rear lights. Therefore, the 1203 was not inferior in design to the first-generation Soviet Rafik or its Polish and East German counterparts. The 1.2-liter engine was shared with Skoda S passenger cars and was significantly more powerful, 64 horsepower, allowing the vehicle, with a curb weight of 1,170 kilograms, to reach a top speed of 95 km per hour and carry 8 passengers or 1 ton of cargo. The first version to enter production was the most in-demand 2-seater delivery van, where the driver and passenger were separated from the cargo area by a metal partition. This was followed by the 8-seater microbus, and over time, other modifications appeared, such as a 5-seater passenger cargo version, a flatbed truck, an ambulance, and even vehicles for funeral services, refrigerated transport, police, fire departments, and veterinary services. In short, once it entered production, the 1203 truly fulfilled its role as a multi-purpose vehicle. While it didn't excel in dynamics or refined handling, it successfully met the needs of state enterprises and even special services. However, the designers were well aware that the time spent getting the vehicle to production had not been in vain, as by the late 60s, the car was already beginning to show its age. Therefore, in the early 70s, work began on modernizing the 1203, resulting in the 1972 prototype of the Skoda 778 van, which featured a more contemporary design, better visibility, and a more powerful 1.5-liter gasoline engine. Unfortunately, like many other Skoda prototypes of the time, it never made it to mass production. To increase production under the limited capacity of the Wrocław factory, starting in 1973, the 1203 was also produced at the TAZ automobile plant in the Slovak town of Trnava, not to be confused with the bus factory of the same name in Zagreb, Yugoslavia. As Skoda was actively updating its passenger car lineup in the early 80s, production of the 1203 was fully transferred to the TAZ plant in 1981. Over 13 years, 69,727 units of Skoda S-only serial microbus were produced in Wrocław. After the dissolution of Czechoslovakia into the independent Czech Republic and Slovakia, the 1203 continued to be produced in Trnava, but now exclusively under the TAZ brand. These vehicles received a 5-speed gearbox, but the 1.4-liter engine still traced its roots back to pre-war designs. The 1203 family finally became history in 1999. This means that the microbus theme was relevant for Skoda for over 40 years, spanning almost the entire second half of the 20th century. In the current century, as part of the Volkswagen Group, the Czechs have never expressed any intention to create a new microbus. For a simple reason, Volkswagen itself has long dominated this segment. However, in 2021, Skoda designer Daniel Hajek, as part of the Icons Get a Makeover project, published his vision of what a successor to the 1203 might look like if it were produced today.